Mark Knopfler, a man who owns a Caribbean seaside mansion where just the iron gate alone could buy a city townhouse. His garage hides vintage cars so rare that collectors only dare whisper their names over glasses of whiskey. A basement recording studio worth millions of dollars, filled with priceless guitars lying still like time machines, his net worth over $115 million. But here's the odd thing. This is the same guy who skipped his own induction ceremony at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What's hiding behind the stage lights that Mark's dodging? What makes him retreat behind those costly, heavy gates? Word is, to get that first big break, he once traded away a chunk of his royalties and maybe more. The question is, did Mark really come out on top? Or has he been carrying a debt only he understands all these years stick around? Because behind that wealth lies a story nobody dares tell in full. These days, Mark Knopfler lives in a Caribbean mansion with a view of the sea, surrounded by guitars worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. He drives rare vintage cars and owns a world-class private recording studio. But few know there was a time when he was just a boy, huddled in a freezing apartment, staring through a cracked window, wondering, is there any way out of this life? Mark Knopfler was born on August 12, 1949, in Glasgow, Scotland. His father, Ervin Knopfler, was a Hungarian Jewish architect who fled Europe as the Nazis spread. Chasing a dream of safety, Mark's mother, Louisa, was a teacher, scraping by her whole life to keep the family afloat in poverty. They lived in a rundown ground-floor apartment, with wind whistling through every corner and winters that cut to the bone. Mark grew up with a constant sense of lack. Even the shoes he wore to school were patched up multiple times. Classmates mocked him, calling him the poor kid, but Mark didn't argue. He'd just go home, crank up the old radio, and lose himself in Elvis, Chet Atkins melodies that carried him to another world. In 1956, when Mark turned 7, the family moved to Blythe, Northumberland. It wasn't the promised land. Mark still felt out of place among kids better off than him. He dreamed of owning a Fender Stratocaster like the heroes on his radio, but the meager wages from his paperboy job at the Newcastle Evening Chronicle at age 13 only stretched far enough for a beat-up Hofner guitar costing £50. Many nights, Mark sat by a broken window, the cold wind outside matched by the chill indoors, his hands numb, fingers bleeding from endless strumming. He didn't dare complain to his mother or cry out loud. He just kept asking himself, what am I doing? Do I have a shot? Or will I always be the kid shivering with this worn-out guitar? Those nights planted a promise in Mark to himself. No matter what it took, no matter how lost he felt in strange lands, he'd find a way to change his life through music. But that first step on the road, in the unfamiliar streets of London, would it be easy? What was waiting for him ahead? Mark Knopfler, now the owner of $1 million recording studio, living in a Caribbean seaside mansion, surrounded by rare vintage cars and priceless guitars. But that fame didn't come from raw talent alone. Word is, to get that first big break with Sultans of Swing, Mark struck a shadowy deal, trading away a chunk of royalties and even some of his musical freedom. The question is, what was the real cost of that breakthrough? When Mark Knopfler left his reporter job at the Yorkshire Evening Post *, he didn't just walk away from a steady paycheck, he gave up the security so many people crave. London in 1973 greeted him with cheap, moldy boarding rooms, peeling walls, and nights crashing on friends' floors. By day, Mark played music wherever he could: smoky pubs, rowdy weddings, parties where nobody bothered to listen. Then there were nights when Mark vanished without a word. Friends, even Kathy White, his first wife, started pulling away. Those nights became an unspoken mystery for years. Some say Mark sought out underground promoters, trading gigs for promises of radio play. Others whisper he humbled himself, signing deals to perform for free for months, all for a flimsy vow of support. Then, in 1977, Dire Straits was born, with their last £500. They recorded a demo of Sultans of Swing in a rundown studio. The track was sent to radio stations and met with silence. Here's the part that's intrigued folks for years, just when hope was fading. Mark got a call in the middle of the night. A gruff voice said, "Your song just played. From now on, you won't know peace." The story goes that a DJ took a risk, defying station rules to play the track, in exchange for a favor owed neither side ever mentioned. Others claim Mark signed away part of the song's royalties to a shadowy music mogul for a leg up. There's even talk he was pressured to commit to making future albums more commercial, despite his longing to keep things raw and real. Whatever the truth, the results were undeniable. In 1979, Sultans of Swing hit the Billboard Top 10 in America. Mark went from an unknown guitarist to a star, but that first night backstage at a big venue, with thousands cheering, Mark didn't smile. He stared at the crowd and wondered, is this success really mine, or did I just sell a piece of my soul to get it? Fame had arrived, but what was the true price Mark paid, and what lay ahead? Glory, or a sweet trap he couldn't escape? Who could have imagined the boy once shivering by a broken window in a freezing Glasgow apartment now owns a Caribbean mansion so grand its rumored price alone leaves people stunned? His London home hides a secret recording studio few have ever entered. Mark's collection of vintage cars, even collectors only dare discuss them in hushed tones, as many have never been seen on camera. People wonder behind every gate, every storage room, every garage, what is Mark hiding so carefully? When Brothers in Arms dropped in 1985, Mark Knopfler hit the peak. Over 30 million records sold, 4 Grammy Awards, sold-out tours across Europe and America. That career built a net worth estimated at over $115 million. Royalties from Sultans of Swing, Brothers in Arms, and solo projects gave Mark the means to buy nearly anything. But he didn't spend like other stars. Mark invested in things few outsiders know about: a Gibson Les Paul rumored to have belonged to a late legend, handwritten song drafts locked in a private safe, and British Grove Studios, a musical fortress worth millions, designed by Mark down to every soundproof wall and wooden detail, a place even guest artists don't fully explore. That success, all its glamour and wealth, still leaves questions. Does Mark truly own it? Or is something still tied to those shadowy deals from years ago? But behind every mansion, every vintage car, every studio, what else is Mark keeping from the public's eyes? Mark Knopfler's homes aren't just places to live. Each one is like a living work of art, lavish not because Mark craves showiness, but because it's the only way he can find peace in a world he no longer trusts. Caribbean Mansion, Barbados. This villa sits right at the water's edge, its entrance shielded by ancient palms and century-old coconut trees curving like giant arms. Rumors peg its value at over $10 million, but real estate experts believe it's worth far more, as its materials can't be found in ordinary stores. The living room boasts a ceiling nearly 8 meters high, with solid mahogany columns from Africa, each hand-carved and weighing a ton. The floors are laid with natural veined white marble from Italy, custom-ordered, each tile chosen so sunlight reflects off it like shimmering water. The infinity pool stretches to the sea's edge, lined with imported Bianco green stone and edged with rust-proof silver. The interior lighting, crafted by an Italian artisan, costs hundreds of thousands of dollars per chandelier, each crystal cut so precisely it scatters light like a canopy of stars. But what makes this mansion legendary is the part no one's seen: a wine cellar deep underground. Not your average cellar, it's clad in black marble, hand-decorated, housing vintage wines too valuable to name publicly and, rumor has it, rare guitars, some once owned by iconic artists, worth more than entire homes. London Historic Home. From the outside, it's a modest red brick house, but inside, it's understated opulence. The basement holds British Grove Studios, a multi-million-dollar recording space with soundproofing so advanced it took audio equipment manufacturers years to custom build. Walls are lined with aged Canadian oak, the ceiling fitted with solid bronze acoustic panels designed to capture even the softest string pluck in pristine clarity. Mark furnished it in classic British-style genuine leather sofas from Scotland, hand-carved walnut bookshelves, each holding small collections, handwritten drafts, Dire Straits' first vinyl, and the original contract from 1977. Rumored to contain secret terms Mark's never revealed, a private room, floored with cloud-veined green marble and sealed with ebony doors. Stays locked, no one knows what's inside. So, what's the story behind Mark's vintage cars? Are there really ones never shown to the public, as the rumors claim? If Mark's homes are fortresses, his car collection is like hidden gems, not flashy modern supercars, but machines steeped in history, their value beyond mere numbers. And notably, hardly anyone has seen Mark drive them on public roads. First, the 1956 Maserati 300 SA Crown Jewel. This isn't just a vintage car, it's a model once called the Holy Grail of 1950s racing. Its value experts estimate over $6 million if Mark ever sold it. Rumor has it this car came from a famous racer's private collection, passing through several hands before landing with Mark. Strangely, it's kept in a sealed storage unit, rarely touched. Even Mark only starts it a few times, as if afraid to stir some memory he'd rather leave buried. Then there's the Aston Martin DBR2, a British legend with a sleek, aerodynamic aluminum body that shines like a mirror. Whispers say Mark won it in a private auction outsiders weren't privy to, through a deal he's never confirmed. Its true worth collectors guess no less than $8 million. What makes it mysterious is its place in a standalone garage, doors locked, with only Mark holding the key. Perhaps his favorite is the Austin Healey 100S customized with authentic 1950s leather upholstery, a mahogany dashboard, and a handcrafted steering wheel, one of a limited run. Rumors claim fewer than 40 still exist worldwide. Word is Mark turned down a collector's offer of nearly $2 million for it. The odd thing, Mark doesn't flaunt them. These cars rarely appear on camera. Their existence is known only through stories from mechanics or vintage car painters who glimpsed them while working for him. The entire collection, valued by insiders at no less than $20 million. Feels like a piece of Mark's memory he won't share. These aren't just cars to drive, they guard a past he keeps private. But beyond the extravagance, what's special about Mark's daily life? How does he spend his money? And what does he seek in his routine? Mark Knopfler is wealthier than the boy with the cheap guitar in a freezing apartment ever dreamed, but his lifestyle isn't the loud wealth you'd expect. Mark's luxury is quiet, noticed only by those who pay close attention. He starts his day at the Caribbean mansion on a sea-facing balcony, a cup of artisanal Italian roast coffee, served in antique porcelain custom-made at a Florence workshop. He reads often limited edition books, poetry, or philosophical essays, some worth as much as a luxury car. Mark's meals are private but far from ordinary. Japanese Wagyu beef, aged French wines, 20-year-old Italian cheeses, all prepared by a former Michelin-starred chef. He almost never dines out. Everything is served in his mansion, where natural light streams through glass walls, reflecting off the marble dining table. Mark avoids glitzy showbiz parties. Instead, his hobbies are music and discreet antique hunts. Rumor has it he once flew to Switzerland just to meet a master luthier, commissioning a guitar no one's seen him play on stage. Another time, he reportedly paid a fortune for a classical composer's handwritten manuscript, now locked in his walnut-paneled study, where few have entered. Money, for Mark, is a tool to craft his private world, not to show off. He spends on perfection only he notices. Every item, every habit, carries a secrecy that sparks curiosity. What is Mark really chasing after all his achievements and wealth? But beneath that quiet, is Mark truly at peace, or do losses and pains still haunt his private life? They say true wealth is giving without fanfare. Mark Knopfler lives that way. Family is Mark's rare haven in a life full of storms. His marriage to Kitty Aldridge, actress and novelist, is kept private, far from the spotlight. They live simply yet elegantly private vacations in their seaside villa. Quiet evenings with Mark strumming an antique guitar while Kitty reads under soft lighting in a walnut-paneled room. Someone once shared that Mark personally built a study for his wife, with every book and desk custom-made to her tastes, a space no one but family enters. With his children, Mark ensures they aren't trapped by his fame. He raises them like ordinary kids, quietly using his wealth as a shield. The best schools, the calmest environments, but never flaunted in the press. His philanthropy follows suit. He auctioned a personal guitar for over $8 million to the Teenage Cancer Trust, but skipped the award ceremony. He supports the Prince's Trust and music education funds, yet you won't see him at public events. They say Mark gives not for praise, but to settle a life debt only he understands. What intrigues people most, no one knows how much Mark has truly given. Publicized amounts are just the surface. How many mansion rooms, locked safes, or quietly sold guitars, manuscripts, and antiques have funded good causes only Mark and his inner circle know. But in the end, do these silent acts of giving bring Mark peace? Or does he still carry an unspoken pain? Mark Knopfler, the man who turned down a seat at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, who slipped away from his own induction ceremony. A man so wealthy and successful he doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, yet still chooses to hide behind the iron gates of his mansions, far from the spotlight. So, what really makes Mark afraid to face his own past? When Dire Straits broke up in 1988, outsiders saw a tired guitarist ready to step back. But inside, Mark carried scars he never shared. Rumors swirled. Part of the reason was that Mark no longer controlled the band he'd founded. During Dire Straits' peak, especially when Brothers in Arms became a phenomenon, commercial deals tied Mark to musical paths he didn't want to follow. Word is, in the band's final years, Mark was pushed to produce songs on demand for major labels, in exchange for protection that kept the group on American radio and TV. There's even talk that one of their last hits had its lyrics tweaked for political reasons, something Mark quietly endured but never spoke of. The truth, a former associate once confirmed, Mark hated being forced, but back then, if you didn't compromise, you got no shot. His refusal to attend the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2018 was the peak of that shadow. Some called him arrogant, but whispers in the industry tell a different story. Mark dreaded sitting among people who'd backed the contracts he wasn't proud of, who'd pressured him to choose fame over quality. A source from the organizers revealed Mark was asked to reunite on stage with some former bandmates to perform a signature Dire Straits song, but he declined, unwilling to relive a time when he felt he'd lost control of the music he created. Then there's the rumor about the shadowy deal from the Sultans of Swing days. Some say Mark signed away a percentage of the song's royalties to a powerful promoter for a chance at American airplay. The real story: a former radio staffer hinted that night. The song got played because of a call from someone with clout. Not luck, but Mark. He stayed silent to bury truths only he knows. With his solo career, Mark reclaimed some freedom, but never the dazzling sales of Dire Straits' heyday. Some say he deliberately avoided mainstream markets to dodge past mistakes. Others believe he's still haunted by a sense of debt to his history. So, in the end, does the legacy Mark leaves in music and life outweigh those scars, or will those shadows follow his name forever? A man who shunned the spotlight, who even skipped his own Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, can he leave a legacy big enough to outshine the shadows of his life? For Mark Knopfler, that legacy isn't found in medals on a wall. It's in every note he plays, every quiet act of giving, every mark he's made without needing to say a word. Mark Knopfler has sold over 120 million records in his career. Sultans of Swing, Brothers in Arms, Money for Nothing. These aren't just hits, they're part of the memories of millions. Mark doesn't need to prove himself because his music does it for him. He didn't chase glory, but each solo album, from Golden Heart to Sailing to Philadelphia to One Deep River in 2024, is like a letter to those who listen. Honest music never goes out of style. At age 75, Mark still plays, still writes, still steps into the studio with the passion of a boy who once strummed until his fingers bled in a freezing room. His greatest legacy isn't just the music, it's the example of resilience, of a man who stayed true amid the storms of fame. He quietly supports causes like the Teenage Cancer Trust and the Prince's Trust, and he built British Grove Studios not just for himself, but to give young artists a world-class space to create. People still ask, why doesn't Mark flaunt what he does? Why let his legacy speak for itself? Perhaps Mark said it best: music doesn't need an interpreter, it just needs a listener. So, what about you? What legacy will you leave behind? And when the lights go out, what remains after your name, after your wealth? Share your thoughts in the comments below.